Welcome to Season 3 of Everything is Learning.
The podcast where we question, explore, and learn on purpose.
We're here to rethink and discover what's possible because learning never stops, and neither do we.
Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Season 3 of Everything is Learning. To say we're excited about our next guest just doesn't cover it. I'm going to try not to fangirl myself into an awkward spiral, but we're welcoming Alinne Butcher, aka my favorite Instagram account. It's truly not an exaggeration at all. If healing happens in relationships, then Alinne is here to make these connections stronger, healthier, and full of possibilities. As the founder of Over the Rug Therapy, I know she really nailed the name. She knows that problems don't improve when we sweep things under the rug. A licensed marriage and family therapist, Alinne specializes in trauma-informed and anti-racist therapy, helping clients navigate life's toughest moments with a blend of empathy, bold honesty, and a dash of Enneagram 8 energy. A proud Brazilian American and lifelong learner, she read 116 books last year. Yes, really. She brings a culturally sensitive approach to healing, guiding clients with insight, warmth, and a little tough love when needed. When she's not helping people untangle emotional knots, you'll find her curled up with a murder mystery, cooking up something delicious, or reluctantly hitting the gym. Today, she's joining us at Everything is Learning to dive into the heart of relationships, self-discovery, and the power of asking why. Alinne, we're so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much. Alinne in your description sounds so cool.
Well, we think she's
The
amazing.
lived Alinne that we're here talking to is even
can't
cooler.
believe it's me. Very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
We're so pumped too, and I really wanted to give a quick shout out to your Instagram account that brings me calmness and peace. Based on the way it's laid out as a detail-oriented person, I truly appreciate the attention that you put into every post with the alternating formats. Thank you so much.
Thank
Chef's
you. I
kiss.
did that intentionally, so I love that compliment. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Also, the rainbow bookshelf in the background, I cannot. Just the amount of peace you bring already to this conversation.
Thank
I
you.
can't.
I'm glad.
We're so
glad.
pumped.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Given that, we would like to kick off with an icebreaker question. And so, given your expertise and passions, can you please explain attachment styles using only coffee orders? Go.
Okay. Do you guys know the attachment styles?
Some,
I
yes.
know some of them, and I know that I took mine at some point.
Okay, so how about I give you the coffee order and you guys try to guess what it is?
Okay, cool.
Okay. The first one is, I'll take my coffee black.
Oh.
And the options are secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized.
I'm going to go with avoidant.
I was going to say that too.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh!
No small talks, no modification. You keep it simple. No one gets too close. I know what I want. Please give it to me. Done.
You didn't really stumble, but I was teetering between anxious, like so that you didn't have to say more,
Oh, that's clever.
but avoidant. Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay, let me do the next one. Let's see.
Yeah.
I have them written down.
Oh.
Okay. So how about, okay, the next order is, I think I'll have a caramel macchiato or maybe a chai. Wait, what do you recommend?
Oh, can you give us the multiple choice again?
Yeah, so secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized.
Oh.
I
was going to say disorganized.
Yes, that's what I was going to go with too. But
This one is more anxious.
Anxious. Mm.
Overthinks your choices, kind of fear judgment, so you lean into what the other person is thinking, you ask for their opinion a little bit, and then you just want to get it right, so you're you're just like, I want everyone happy. What should I get? What's going to make me happy?
Yeah.
Okay, third one is, I'll have a medium oat milk latte, please, and can I have the lid? Thank you so much.
secure.
Oh, that person's hella organized, so that's not it. That's my order.
Yes. Well, secure attachment.
I don't know that I'd call myself that, but I feel like I'm over anxious, so I plan everything out.
That makes sense as well. Yes. And then the
Yeah.
last one, I want something sweet but not too sweet. I hate coffee, but I really need caffeine. I think I'll get a mocha, but what do you think? Maybe I'll get a matcha. Wait, never mind. Just surprise me.
That is so good. I mean, like, obviously, because we've
Done
used up
that.
all the others, but, like, seriously, I could think about that from a breakfast order. Sometimes, like, there will be people who I refuse to go out to restaurants with because of their indecisiveness. It's like,
Yes.
it makes me anxious. I'm like, freaking choose. I don't even care if you copy my order at this point.
Just choose.
Yes, right.
Yes.
So, those are so
Or order it
good.
all.
Right, right. So that last one was disorganized.
Yeah.
That's so
You're
good.
like you're craving connection and comfort, but you don't really know what you want. You want safety, so you like lean into what the other person is saying. You overall kind of just distrust the other person, you distrust yourself, you don't have that security and really knowing what it is that you want. So it's just like kind of scattered all over the place.
Um, out of curiosity, just because that was so well tangible examples, do you find that some of the attachment styles occur like are more common for younger selves versus older selves, or are they pretty consistent at any point in your life? Like you might find any of those when you're younger and they may change when you're older. The reason I was asking is as you were describing them, I can think of my first time at Starbucks, and I probably was every single one of those people at some point, but now I'm definitely secure. I know my coffee order. Got that nailed down.
So I would say that our attachment styles are not set in stone.
Okay.
I know that there are like certain personality tests and things like that. That's what you are forever. But you can create secure attachment. You are not locked in. And there is a attachment style type that we tend to lean towards. Like I tend to lean more anxious, but I have a lot of avoidant attachment tendencies.
Oh,
And depending on who I'm with, those come out a little bit more. I am anxiously attached. My partner is avoidantly attached, but I always say that together we've been able to cultivate a secure attachment. And so it really fluctuates. It depends on age. It depends on how much work you've put into kind of undoing the behaviors and the beliefs that you've internalized.
mm-hmm.
So it can vary. And I would say it usually comes out in adulthood because as children, you're really just surviving. So, I mean, you can see the behaviors as kids, but kids are really malleable. So if the parents are adjusting their behaviors, the kids will also follow in that.
Wow.
That's good for.
That's like 5 years of therapy, like in a 2-minute spiel. Wow.
As Alinne and I are parents to developing children, it's good for us to realize that, like if we fluctuate, then that has a direct effect on them. So that's really helpful. And how could you also offer how much does the people that they're involved with, like, so not just parents, but how do other adults in their lives help with harm, thank you, attachment?
Yeah, that's such a really good question because I think generally we think that it falls solely on the parents, and parents do play a really big part, but you can actually have secure attachment with your parents, and because of the environment that you're in, school, depending on sicknesses or diagnoses that the child has, the way that they're involving with other people within the family, uncles, cousins, they can develop insecure attachments as well. And so parents do play a really important part, but there are other factors as well. If the kid is getting bullied at school, that's not going to create a secure attachment. If the child doesn't have a lot of friends their age, right, that's not going to be the best. If there are a lot of adults in their lives that are chaotic, even though the parents are stable, if they have consistent connection and contact with these other chaotic adults, that will create insecure attachment as well. Essentially, our attachment style is about how well our needs are able to be met with the adults in our lives.
Okay.
And so teachers, grandparents, older adults, parents, all of those are factors in the child's needs getting met.
Thanks for that.
I like that you use the word chaotic adults. I don't know that I have heard that term before and felt like that's so relatable
Mhm.
to, I don't know, I just had flashes in my mind of not only people from like cinema, but also like people that I know.
Mhm.
And honestly, sometimes I can be a chaotic adult. You know, like we're talking about attachment styles and how it can impact our children. Full transparency, sometimes I can be a little chaotic and I don't even mean to, but I feel chaotic when I'm not organized.
Mhm.
And I know that like if we're getting in the car and we're running out and I don't have the bag packed, that it raises the anxiety level of my kids because
Mhm.
they're so used to me being so organized. And
Exactly.
I see that direct correlation, and that's why I pack my bags the night before if we're going somewhere because
Yeah.
I don't like the direct result for my kids.
Exactly.
For
Exactly.
But
me, it's like the mental load thing. If I don't
yeah.
have a lot of mental load, then I feel more structured, secured, like I can present my best self. But
Yeah.
holiday times, I am a chaotic adult.
Yeah, I feel like I use the word chaotic adults because really at any point of our lives we step into this role. And when we're talking specifically about kids, kids are very sensitive. And so if you're a little bit loud, like me, that is going to be a chaotic adult for a child who is overstimulated easy
Mm.
or just prefers quiet, right? I am being a chaotic adult when I am laughing too loud. If I'm tickling them too loud and that's not what they're wanting, I'm being chaotic for them. And
Yeah.
if you're typically organized and you wake up one day you didn't sleep well, you're disorganized that day, your child will be reading that as, oh my gosh, today mom's being chaotic. Obviously, in different words and in different understanding, but we're all susceptible to being chaotic at some point.
Yeah.
Great point.
I I th- it just I feel like if more people could be vulnerable with understanding that piece, it would probably also help with attachment styles too. But it's really hard. I don't know. You make me feel really comfortable, but I feel like I kind of know you because we follow your Instagram
I
account.
love
So
it.
maybe that's what it is. But and speaking of following your Instagram account, so one day I was perusing on our podcast account and we were pretty new. And I see over the rug therapy, and I find that so many people, whether I know them or they're part of our family or, you know, they just use it out in the world, say, we sweep everything under the rug. And it could be a tagline for some
Mhm.
families.
Mhm.
And I saw that and I was like, following. So, can you tell us the story? Because I immediately was like drawn just to the name. I was immediately drawn. Like, talk to us about this bit.
Yes. So it was I want to say like 5, 6 years ago. I kept hearing this phrase like we were sweeping things under the rug. And it's like really wild things like family secrets, even for me, where I talked to my brother about something within the family, and my parents were like, you weren't supposed to tell him. So we're just meant to brush things under the rug, that like we're even within family, right? We're sweeping things under the rug. And I was like, I'm very like, visual, so in my mind I was like, this family rug has so much stuff underneath, like we can't even walk anymore. We gotta sweep things out.
It's lumpy.
And I came up with the thing. I was like, we need to just put it over the rug. What's the problem with keeping it on the rug? Because then we have the power to put it in its place or get rid of it. And that's essentially how I came up with that. I was sick and tired of sweeping things under my family rug, and I was like, put it over so that we can talk about it. If we need to argue, let's argue, but we can't hide it anymore.
Obsessed.
How
Marissa, you
do
were saying it was lumpy.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
For some people, it's a mountain.
For
Yes,
sure.
exactly.
But like, yeah, the rug's on the tip top. We're not touching it anymore.
Yeah.
No, but in the course of therapy with individuals, I'm sure that there are plenty that teeter one way or the other, and there's not an absolute. But in a case of a client that doesn't immediately tell you about things that are swept under the rug, how do you navigate the path to figuring out what those things are?
Yeah, it's a slow process, right? No one is going to come in, especially therapeutically, no one's coming into my office 100% trusting me, lifting up their rug, right? It's a slow process. So much so that there are things I would even say for each of us that we're not even aware sometimes that we've swept under the rug.
Good point.
1 year, almost 1 year ago, I lost my aunt, and a few weeks
Oh,
ago, I
I'm
was like
sorry.
in a argument with my partner, and I was just like, what is going on? Like, I was just so flustered, and it was grief. And it was this concept of grief because I have to sometimes put my grief aside to tend to the people that I work with, right? It wouldn't be
Mhm.
appropriate for me to just be, oh, that really triggered me. I also lost an aunt. Let's cry together, right? I can't show up like that. And so sometimes I have to put my grief to the side. Sometimes I have to sweep it under the rug because I have responsibilities after work. And so I was sweeping my grief way too long and it kind of bubbled over and erupted. So sometimes we're not even aware that we're doing that, right? It can be very sneaky behavior, especially if you grew up doing it. So we take it slow. The trust between me and the client, me and the other person that, whoever I am in a relationship with, informs my safety to continue, right, lifting up the rug and putting things over the rug. If
That's
there's
great.
not a sense of safety or a sense of trust, then things are going to continue staying under the rug. Depending on, I would say honestly, depending on the diagnosis that I'm working with, like if I'm working with someone with complex PTSD that has had prolonged and repeated forms of trauma, it'll take 9 months to a year for them to really fully trust me.
Wow.
And it's not that we're not doing anything to uncover it, but the deeper issues there, we're going to keep tampering those down until we're feeling safe to actually emotionally expose that. Yeah.
That's hard work. I mean,
Hmm.
you're talking about what a complex job that you have in the sense of like you may be triggered, but you have to manage your emotions to not project. How do you do that? Because I feel like that's a skill that not everybody has, but it is one that I think, so this is hard, right? Because it's a line of not sweeping things under the rug, but it also is like honoring what you're being triggered by. And I think there's this sense right now that a lot of people are uncovering, particularly within family structures, of yeah, there's so much under the rug.
Hmm.
How do I maintain a boundary and how do I manage being triggered and owning my triggers and navigating how to still be part of a family that continues to put things under the rug even though they're working on uncovering things. Like I didn't know that things can happen simultaneously, but it kind of sounds like that too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Things happen simultaneously. That's your perspective is so interesting because for me, I mean, I'm just a human, right? Living day to day. And just because I have the understanding and the concept of how things work doesn't exclude me from actually being human and living day to day. And so I think one of the things that makes me a really amazing therapist is that I've lived these things that I'm walking through with the people I work with my clients, right? I'm not the best work that I do is with things that I've had tangible experience with. And so there will absolutely what we call countertransference, where it feels like our feelings are kind of getting wrapped up. I'm feeling emotional because I'm remembering the things that I've been through. It takes practice, it takes skill to not, I call it not taking up space, right? Because this person essentially is paying me for my expertise in this space, right? I'm curating this space for them. And so I'm here to meet their needs. And it reminds me of a lot about parenthood. Obviously, the kid is not paying, but right, they're not responsible to heal us. They're not
Mhm.
responsible to make sure that we feel seen. We're here to help them feel seen. I'm here to help my clients feel seen. And so the feelings, I mean, they do come up sometimes, and I am human, and I've had moments where I have cried. And I know my triggers. I have a few triggers: cancer, um, unexpected death. So if I'm working with someone suddenly dies, that's a lot for me to handle, right? I didn't have time to kind of prepare for that. So those are my two specific types of triggers. And so I know if those two things happen or if those two things are coming up, I have to do more coping skills outside of session to make sure that I'm regulated and showing up as the support person and not as the person who also needs to take up space.
Wow.
That
Do
makes
do
sense.
other therapists do that?
If you're a good therapist, yes, and there are a lot of bad therapists, right? There are a lot of people that are bad at their craft. But essentially, if you're good at your craft, other therapists should be doing the same. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Is
How do you
is
get
it
it?
some is it oh, sorry.
No,
I
you
will
go first.
I've always wanted to know this. I feel like I've heard that therapists have to have a therapist in order to stay licensed. Is that false?
That is false.
Okay.
You don't have to have it. It's really recommended. I've had one and I'm actually going to go back in a few months, hoping that she has openings. Just because life transitions, things happening. Also it's a little expensive. So my husband right now is in therapy. And he's wrapping up his sessions. He's been it for like 2 years and a half, tremendously helpful. And then it's my turn again. We also have supervision, which is more ethical and required, which is helpful, right? To manage the countertransference, the projections and things like that. So there's that as well.
It's amazing.
Given the intense topics that tend to come up in therapy, how do you get it? So I love the idea of over the rug, but since you're taking things out from under the rug, how do you navigate the not pulling the rug out from someone's feet versus just uncovering things that have been slightly swept under the rug?
Yeah, that's so good. And I've had people that I work with literally say those exact words of like, it feels like you're pulling the rug from out under me. And I mean, I think often first we have a misunderstanding of what healing and therapy looks like.
Oh, okay.
Therapy with me is safe, but it is hard work. Sometimes you're leaving session, you're not having a good time with me. It's not that I'm being mean, but we're uncovering, right? We're really pulling back some deep family secrets, some deep familial patterns that are we're like, I actually don't want to uncover that. And so it just brings up a lot. So essentially, I go at the pace of the other person.
Okay.
If I am able to clock something, right? And I will say something like, in order to save you time and money, this is what I'm seeing. This is the clinical observation. And what they do with that information lets me know if we can go right into it, if we have to slow down, if they're ready to receive it, if they're not. Sometimes the analogy I use is this pill is really hard to swallow. Can we break it up a little bit so that you're right? The rug is not being swept from under you. Why is this so big? Why is this so difficult for you to handle?
Okay.
Um, and also, right, if we're using analogies and metaphor, if the rug is ripped out from under you, is it possible for us to land on hardwood floor? Or is it that we're landing just in space, right? What's the analogy that we can kind of continue using to help you feel more stable? If the person also is overwhelmed, let's put that rug back there, right? There's no need for us to be utterly flooded and overwhelmed right now. We can take it slower. So it's really a case by case process. And again, it really depends on how much the person trusts me, right? If they trust me and believe that there is a solution that we're able to walk towards healing, it makes it easier versus I don't really trust you. I don't know you. You might be just saying this because you want my money, right? And I get it. Yeah.
How do you encourage people, maybe in your own life or your friends, or I don't know, even on social media? I feel like I'm constantly encouraged by the way that you approach things. I I feel like there are so many people out there right now who are still navigating the fact that they think therapy is stigmatized, and it is by society in a way. But I talked to Marissa a lot about how my husband and I are in therapy. We're Everyone's a work in progress. and we have friends and we're like, hey, what did you talk to your therapist about this week? Like, and I think that's super healthy.
Mhm.
But people think that's crazy. And I don't understand that, because if our purpose on earth is to continue to learn and to limitlessly transform, how are you doing it if you're not constantly practicing metacognition?
Mhm.
And aren't you curious about yourself? Is kind of my thought. But why do you think there's still a stigma? I don't understand that part, and I don't mean to be ignorant about it, but I really don't understand why everyone's not in therapy. And I firmly believe in universal, like, free therapy for people. But some people are also like, I don't have a problem, so I don't need to go. But I don't think therapy is for people necessarily with problems. We all have things we're navigating. I don't know, I digress. You
No.
step in.
And the thing, right? I don't have any problems. Oh my gosh, you've cracked the human code to not have any problems.
Yeah,
I will buy
totally.
your formula, please.
For real, I know.
Write a book.
Yeah,
Bestseller immediately.
exactly. Yes. This concept that
Fate
we don't
of
have any
delusion.
problems.
That's a great title.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, this concept that we don't have any problems, or I mean, I hear it all the time. What's the saying? It's like we're gonna keep things that happen within the family. Okay, you're
Mm.
not gonna ever get any outside perspective through reading a book. I don't know, even listening to a song sometimes is helpful, right? You have this new
Yes.
poetic um perspective. You're not gonna ever open up to a pastor. You're never gonna open up to a friend. That's just, I mean, utterly isolating and so unhelpful, so unhealthy. I don't know why mental health is still stigmatized. I think it's the most fascinating thing.
Yeah.
From my understanding, I would say, right, in terms of systemic things, talking about systems that don't function will never go over well. And sometimes the systems that don't work are family systems. And so people are going to push back deeply, right? We can't talk about parents, this hierarchy, depending on the culture, right? Latinx culture, Black culture, very protective, very collective, which is beautiful, but also very limiting in the sense of like, if you're in trouble and you can only stay within your family group, you can only stay within your collective community, you're also limited in the resources that you have.
Well said.
I just imagine therapy as a resource, right?
Right.
It's this additional thing that I want to do, I want to have in order to get to know myself better. The it would be amazing if we could see therapy as just getting to know yourself better, right? Why is it that I react this way? What are these patterns? Why don't I care about this thing, or why am I deeply caring about this other thing, right? It's so fascinating to learn about ourselves. But again, the systems that we live in, constantly needing to work, moms not being supported well, right? No maternity leave. I mean, all the systems, they just don't leave a lot of space for growth.
Mm.
Everything is hustle, everything is grind, everything is monetize a hobby that you have. And so we're really leaving little time to like explore the emotional aspect, which is we're only able to do that when we leave the survival mode. The first thing to go in survival mode is emotional regulation. You just can't, right? That's the first thing to go. And so if we're constantly living in survival mode, which a lot of us are, feelings, we don't have time for feelings, right? Keep your head down, do what you need to, and that's that. We don't have time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Lane, to your point though, too, and I think that us talking has kind of helped me get this, but there's a lot of shame, especially when you're not able to figure it out yourself. Like that, it's almost like by accessing therapy, which I also view as a resource, is being vulnerable and asking for help because you yourself couldn't come up with that. That's not how I see it anymore, but at the start of it, that's how I sort of introduced to it. But there's the shame. The really redeeming part for me is hearing when I'm not the only person with this problem or with
Mm-hmm.
this concern. And there's like a community of support. But if I kept that to myself, then I don't get help and I can't move past it. So but shame is a really real thing, and Alinne, when you were talking about some of the demographics or cultural groups or whatnot, I think gender is also part of this. And
Oh yeah.
I love my husband, but I also know that a lot of times I will talk to him and it doesn't always feel like he hears me because he doesn't understand my perspective.
Oh yeah.
And I think the current political climate has kind of, I really did appreciate a recent conversation that he had because he gave me some perspective that I didn't have before. That said, I think lived experience, which you had talked about earlier, helps you clue in and tap into your clients in a different way when you have that tangible experience. And it's true. And I think that with my husband, he has not the same lived experiences that
Oh
I do.
yeah.
And some of them, like socially, you can get past, but others of them, like mental load, it will always be a disparity. And I'm sure physical labor wise, there's probably a disparity. Like he can pick up my older son. I'm really struggling with that. And he is the type to elope, so I really do need him around. So like, I mean, it does balance out, but I really appreciate what you said. But I think some of the reason that other people, Elena, to your earlier question, have some struggle is still a lot of that shame and consciousness to be vulnerable, especially if you grew up in a place where you never were role modeled that.
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability, right?
Yeah,
Particularly for men.
Or honesty. Yeah,
Honest,
sure.
Honesty. I don't even know. I don't know how people function not being honest. I really don't. It makes me ill.
It erodes trust, that's for sure.
Yeah, but it does. And like, so if you could give one piece of advice for everyone on relationships and how to repair or how to build, what would you give?
Ooh, just in general.
Yeah, I mean, or specific, like if something's coming to mind. I think that when you hear the word relationship, I think often it goes to love of another, as opposed to maybe something like platonic, like in the workplace, someone you work with, or something that doesn't require love in the deep amorous piece of or kind of viewpoint. But I think of relationships with, if you walk into a store, you're going to communicate with other people. So maybe it's not even just a relationship in terms of like actually having a firm bond with people, but also in communication. Because I think oftentimes nowadays, with the current climate of where things are in the world politically, with us unlearning and undoing systemic issues, are taking those from out the rug, like what is a good foundation to build upon if you are still feeling stigmatized by mental health, if you really don't have a place to start besides following your account, which by the way, when Viola Davis, I'm so sorry, I'm like going off, when Viola Davis reshared your post, I lost my mind.
Same.
She is everything. My favorite actor of all time, Viola Davis. And I was like, my favorite Instagram account and my favorite actor of all time. Stop it. I was so pumped for you, but sorry, I digress.
I know. I was like, I can't believe that she read my my word. I was like, oh, that's.
Alinne, I was hoping I was picking up on, oh, hey, I know who Viola Davis' therapist is.
No.
That would be amazing. I know you can't tell us. That would be
amazing. Yeah, I can neither confirm or deny.
I get it. Maybe I'll just keep that in my own, Matrix reality that's true.
And
I want to live on that timeline.
I love it. The question about relationships.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Advice on relationships.
So I feel as though like the main thing when I'm working with families, when I'm working with couples, if people are having issues with roommates, with coworkers, whoever, the main thing that I always come back to is the relationship that we have with ourselves is the blueprint for other relationships, right? The way that we view ourselves, if we abandon ourselves,
Wow.
right? The way that we view ourselves, the way that we talk to ourselves, if is going to reflect the other relationships that we have. And so even in couples work, a lot of it is kind of unpacking, where does this belief come from? Let's dig a little deeper. This argument that we're having right now, right? The emotions are really big for what's happening. Let's dig into what's happening for you individually. Um, I think that that's the most important relationship that we can have, our relationship with ourselves. If there's stability there, right? If there is a sense of like, I am loved, I'm safe, I am connected to this world, the way that we move about, the way that we enter rooms is going to look different versus if we feel really insecure, if we feel like people reject us, if we're constantly on the lookout of not feeling good enough, right? We're going to enter a room really different. We're going to view things a lot differently. So aligning ourselves with the truth of who we are, which is we're loved, we're worthy, and we're safe, even if bad things happened in the past, really helps set us up to have healthier relationships.
I know. Wow.
Can you just like live? Can you be like our adopted sister? Like, can you
I
come
would love
live
to.
here?
I need you to be my hype person.
I feel
I'll
like
do
I'm gonna make that a clip that's like my ringtone.
it.
But like legitimately, like I read somewhere this morning, and you can probably speak to this, that when you're in a marriage, it's basically an unlearning of all of the things that you were impacted by in childhood. So, really, what you're bringing to a marriage is all of your childhood wounds, and your relationship with your partner is part of that is unpacking, or most of it is unpacking that. And I don't think people talk about that in relationships. But again, if you go back to what you said about being saved and loved, and if you can say that, then you can unpack those things. And I do think that would make therapy more accessible for people to just admit, like, hey, things can coexist. My parents did the best that they could, or maybe they didn't,
Mhm.
but it can be my parents did the best that they could, but it wasn't what was best for me.
Exactly.
And that blew my mind when I heard that from other people.
Mhm.
We were really lucky that we grew up in a household where therapy was something that was like, hey, you know what? You seem to be going through something right now. Like,
Mhm.
why don't we just put you in touch with a therapist and see how it goes?
Mhm.
And it was more of like an invitation than it was something that was stigmatized.
Mhm.
And so when you grow up in a household like that, you don't really see it that way.
Mhm.
But I think you often talk about relationships like they can be our greatest source of pain and our greatest path to healing.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering why you think that and where that kind of came about, because I think it's true.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Relationships, I mean, we hurt in relationships, but we also heal in relationships. And the second part is what really trips us up sometimes, right? Because
Mm.
subconsciously, what's internalized is this person or this type of relationship has hurt me, so now I'm not going to engage, right? I'm not going to be emotionally available for friendships. I'm not going to be emotionally available for men. I'm not going to be emotionally available for romance anymore. And that cutoff is dangerous, right? Because we are only able to deeply heal, really experience healing in relationships. There's no other way around it. You're not going to be able to heal to the fullest extent on your own. You're not going to be able to do it isolated. It's always going to be in community with other people involved. Obviously, it needs to be trusting relationships, right? And sometimes not in the same environment that hurt you, but healing will involve having relationships to some capacity. Sometimes it's only I only trust my therapist right now, right? Sometimes no one else feels safe. I don't even feel safe, but I've kind of got to know this therapist. It seems like she has my best interest, and that's where we start. right? It's always helpful with people who do have friends outside of therapy because then they can lean on that person as well. But we absolutely need relationships to heal. And the catch 22 is that you're probably healing from a really painful relationship.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that would be exactly where my thought was. So I heard you. You can't do healing alone. At the
Mhm.
same time, that shouldn't just open yourself up to everyone. So for people, myself included, who struggle with setting boundaries, what might be a mindset shift or a tool that could make it easier so that you're not constantly in harmful relationships, but you are still healing within by finding safe people?
You know, this concept of boundaries has come up so much lately. I made a video of like 9 terms often misused.
Yes.
Yeah, and one of them was boundaries, and I didn't realize I guess the confusion around boundaries. I mean, I did because it's often misused, but I got some really great conversations from it. And really, I think the main thing about boundaries is that we think it's about the other person. We focus on the other person's
Yeah.
behavior.
Yeah.
But
Right.
boundaries are about us. Boundaries are
Yes.
they need to be empowering for us, right? Boundaries are meant to give other people a blueprint of how you can treat me.
Yeah.
And it's essentially like how much can this person, I guess, act out before you're dysregulated? That should be your metric, right? I'm setting this boundary because when you do this, I'm going to be automatically dysregulated, and now we're not going to be connecting on a even playing field because I'm going to want dominance, or I'm going to want to control you, or I'm going to want to yell. And so boundaries are really a way to stay connected in a healthy way. What can I do in this situation to stay regulated? Right? And so the examples that I've been giving is a statement is don't yell at me. That's a statement, right? That's not a boundary. The boundary, focusing on me, is if you continue to yell at me, I will walk away. Because when you continue yelling at me, I get so dysregulated that I'm not going to be able to engage with you in a healthy way. And
Right.
so I feel empowered to not let myself cross my boundary, meaning if you can act any way you want, but I'm not going to allow you to dysregulate me. I'm going to be walking away to preserve my emotional safety. I'm going to be preserving our relationship, even though it feels like right now you're not able to do that.
Yeah. In I think it was season 2, we talked about boundaries. And when we talked about it, the conversation came up where it was like, a boundary is a wall. And I was like, you know what? My husband actually told me from therapy that a boundary is a door.
Hmm.
And you have the ability to walk in or walk out whenever you want.
Yes.
And I never realized that because I feel like the older generations that are living right now see a boundary as a threat. And like when you talk about it historically and you think about boundary lines, like don't cross the line, right? It goes back to language and how we have to unlearn the language that gives something meaning in order to relearn and reframe what it actually means for us. And even doing that with boundaries is like a full month of like unpacking, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
But I love that you are like explaining that to people because I felt like that takeaway to have it in print where you could reshare exactly what you said and how people are using it wrong. That's one thing that I really love about following you and learning from you is that the way that you reframe things and do it in a way that makes it accessible is why therapy doesn't feel like it has to be this thing that we've all been told that it was or is.
Right. Right.
And I so
It
appreciate that about you.
absolutely.
I was
You were
gonna
going to
say,
say
and
something, Marissa?
for me, the boundary being like a physical thing. You had talked about how it's to you define it as to the point where you're dysregulated. I have
Hmm.
a son with autism, and I know exactly what dysregulation gets, and I can often like articulate when I'm dysregulated, but I never thought about it from like a lens of a boundary.
Mhm.
And oh my gosh, was that an impactful moment. Ah,
Oh, I'm so
like for
glad.
me, because I'm like, oh man, and it's not like I can generally speaking regulate, but like recently my son learned how to open up the refrigerator and he doesn't
Smart
close
boy.
it and
He
it
Oh,
is.
beeps and my anxiety heightens. And I literally was thinking in the background, how the heck can I figure out a way to make this a safe boundary? Because I can't, like, where my threshold was probably 8 times before, now it's 3. Now it's 3 and I'm
mm,
done, and I've shoved the broom in between the handles and he can't access the refrigerator. I gotta find a better way because I want him to be able to get access to what he wants, but it can't be with leaving the fridge open. So,
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
thank you for that. I never considered it that way.
Well, there you go. And I completely agree that boundaries like are not walls, right? They
Mhm.
are doors to show like this is where you access connection to me best. The
Right.
analogy I often use is like there's a door right here. Why are you going to keep bulldozing through the wall? And then I have to
Mm.
keep reconstructing and rebuilding it, and it's actually making my window of tolerance so much shorter because just use the door, right? Just
Right.
use open it,
Like
close
people
it.
can have boundaries too. Like boundaries go both ways.
Yes.
But I
And
don't think people know how that works.
oh my goodness, within within cultures, and I will say like specifically for Brazilian culture, in Portuguese we don't even have a word that translates to boundary. And so
Oh.
even that is very like I would say Americanized, right? There we don't have a specific word for that. The closest word is I guess limit, which I feel like does encompass it well, but it's so much more than that because I'm actually not limiting you. I am inviting you to stay connected with me through this boundary,
Right.
right? If you don't honor, if we're not able to honor this boundary, it's not going to do the relationship well. It's in boundary is not a rejection. And I think that's what happens a lot. It's interpreted as rejection when in reality, that's not what it is. It's an invitation for us to stay connected. It's just so hard to get people to understand that sometimes.
And to buy into it. And I think that kind of goes back to like the climate of intellectualism right now, right? Is like you can have the information that is like irrefutable, but to
Mhm.
actually buy into it is a different level of intentional learning. Like we've gone from learning information to taking it with intent and then moving forward.
Mhm.
And I think that that's really interesting that it happens again to Marissa's point, like it happens for a lot of different people. And that also makes it accessible to say, like, with vulnerability, this is what's happening. One thing that you've brought up a lot in your posts has been that you practice it's anti-racist therapy.
Yes.
So, what does it mean to practice anti-racist therapy and why is it essential in the field of mental health?
Yes. I really feel like every therapist should be practicing anti-racist therapy because how are you really helping people if you're not anti-racist, right? It's like I think it's the wildest thing when people are not anti-racist to begin with. And I will say even with being anti-racist, I want to specify, right, that this encompasses a lot of things. It's not just about skin color. Anti-racist care is also understanding, and this is like the first thing, understanding systemic issues. Naming the system, not just the symptoms, is so important, right? Because if we get caught up in just naming the symptoms, we're not really getting to the main issue. The main issue is the systems that we exist in are not functioning well. They're not supporting health, right? We're not incorporating inclusivity. And anti-racist care, anti-racist therapy seeks to have equity for everyone, not just for brown and black people. We want equity for everyone, right? That LGBT included, right? Across the board, everyone deserves a fair playing field. We're not seeking power. We're not seeking control. We're seeking to just be able to exist. And I think that that's the tricky part about anti-racist therapy is that often we get caught up in wanting things to be equal for our people group, and we forget that actually equality in having access and resources available to everyone means being able to advocate and fight for all the people who are being discriminated against or all the people that are being marginalized. You have to understand cultural context. You have to understand different cultures. And this falls on therapists to be informed, right? If you're not learning it in school, you have to read books. You have to do supervision with people who are able to pour into you. Another main thing, you have to challenge internal biases. I
Mm.
say this all the time. You're not, how do I say this? You're not anti-racist, right? It's not enough to just say I'm not racist.
Right.
We all are. We all are racist, and we have to come to terms with that. We exist in a society that is extremely fat phobic, racist, misogynistic, what's the one for homosexuality? Homophobic.
Homophobic.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. Right, we exist in that. That is the baseline for us. And if we are not actively challenging these biases that has been internalized in us, we are going with the flow.
Right.
I saw this TikTok once. It was so amazing.
Is
I
it
wish I
about
had the
black
creator.
paint?
Yeah, yes. Wait, about the cup on the table?
Yeah, or black cup. Yes, cup filled with
Yes.
black paint. Yes, yes, I
Yes.
saw that. I was like, that is the best analogy I've ever heard and seen.
Amazing. So
I'm out of the
essentially,
loop. Tell me what it is.
Yeah. Aline,
And we will
please,
repost it so that people can see it.
yes.
Aline, please
Essentially,
describe it.
she's essentially talking about like systemic things, right? And if there's two ways you can push back on the cup or you can push forward on the cup. There's only two outcomes, but there's three things that we can do. We can be the force that's pushing back on the system that's represented by the cup, right? And in that sense we're pushing back on it. We can be pushing it forward and helping it kind of fall off the table, or we can do nothing, but the system is going to continue moving to essentially, I think, fall off the table. And she talks about like, if you're not doing anything,
Part of the problem.
you're still oppressing, you're still being racist, you're still being fat phobic, you're still right, you're still upholding the system. And so I absolutely love that analogy because so often people are so passive, right? They're like, well, I'm not doing that, or I would never say that. Okay, not enough. It's
Right.
not enough. People, we need to understand that people who are being marginalized, and I think right now, I think specifically about the LGBTQ community. They are at a higher risk of dying simply by being LGBT, right?
Right.
Trans people are more likely to be killed because they are trans. That's insanity. We
It is
cannot just
insanity.
sit back and be like, well, they can pick. Okay, and Well,
They can pick what?
right.
No,
They can pick what?
I hear you.
Like, seriously?
And for our listeners who are maybe not understanding that analogy, because I know a lot of this is me presenting some bias, but if there are any listeners who are sports fanatics, here's another way to think about it. We talk about momentum or quicksand, right? When one thing starts to go badly, lots of things
whole
kind of pile
comes-
up. Or
yeah.
the same with good momentum. Like the momentum's on our side. We got to keep using it. It's like people who wear the same shirt every time, like when a favorite team is in the playoffs, or like that you think that there's some kind of luck or logistic because the momentum is in your favor. That's exactly what this is. So if the oppressive system is winning and the momentum is with them and you do nothing to push back, the inaction is still helping that momentum. And I hate to use the word momentum because I feel like there's a positive connotation. In this instance, momentum is bad. The momentum is with the oppressor unless someone else does something about it. And the truly brilliant example that I can think of, I was so grateful. I don't necessarily know that I'm grateful that this happened because I would rather there not be a war with the Ukraine and Russia, but President Zelensky and all of the momentum of the press that that launched, despite the conversation that happened in the Oval Office, I am glad that it got brought to light because people actually decided to take action. Like they didn't they refused to stop. They refused to not do anything. They had to do something because the people who really could and had the power to do something chose actually not to. So then they pushed back against the cup of black paint. And I'm so glad.
Yes.
Like, say what you will about the political climate, but like, I'm glad that people are bringing attention. And I think that is why now there's certain people excluded. Like, I heard that there was this whole press circle and now some people can't go in and report. I think that's because some of the visibility that things have been given light to aren't going in the same direction that we want. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. I'm so glad. We will absolutely tag that video because it is perfection. And it was really a young person who came up with this super great illustration of what that is like.
Yes. People's creativity in really making things tangible. I like chef's kiss to you guys. I love it. It's so helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, like, I feel like a lot of people, the way that we intake information now and like how quickly we do that, to have a visual where you can see that, where you don't have the volume up if you're scrolling.
Yeah.
It sounds profound enough that you wouldn't have needed to be able to hear it.
Yeah.
And I think that says kind of everything you need to say about that.
Yes.
I find it so fascinating that, fascinating is not the right word. Disgusting. There. That there could possibly be therapists who are not anti-racist out there. I mean, humans in general, the fact that we're not like actively anti-racist. And again, you've talked about biases. You know, the first thing that you said when you said that there wasn't a word for boundary in Portuguese was, the colonizers created that. The colonizers could probably create, the white colonizers probably created the word boundary because all they did was pillage and take, right? Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know where that falls on the spectrum of like anti-racist. And I know a lot of people right now, especially with the political climate, are talking about, you know, President Trump and Elon Musk and bringing in all of these elements of what happened in World War II. And I don't understand how people can stay silent, and I don't understand why we're still having these conversations about why, like, I can't get you to understand why all humans should be treated with the same respect and like given the grace to be able to learn. There are people, I just read a post from somebody on Threads yesterday who was like, I voted for Trump. This is why I voted for Trump. This is why I am actively acting against Trump right now. Because everything that was promised, and it's like, that's the same thing with racism. It's the same thing with bigotry. It's the same thing with marginalizing any single group. Like, I am heartbroken that J.K. Rowling has now destroyed Harry Potter because we were a Harry Potter household. And like, how are you sitting there creating a character that I feel like trans people, I am not a trans person, but trans people would so relate to, fighting evils, fighting monsters, you know, just wanting to live. It's ridiculous to be the perpetrator of something that was created, that you created. Yeah. And now you're the perpetrator? It doesn't make sense. Like, make it make sense. Alinne, make it make sense. Please.
As my husband always says, you're looking for logic where logic does not exist.
I saw a comedian that talked about how if you can't outsmart him, you gotta outdumb him.
I just watched that this morning.
It was so funny. The example he gave was so funny, and it really helped.
With my monster truck. I'll send it to you, Alinne.
Right, exactly. It helped me take back some control, and like I've honestly been thinking about, well, how can I be creative and outdumb people? Because like it just leaves them so flabbergasted and making them think. And like bonus points if you can kind of push your own agenda. And when you see the video, you'll kind of understand what I meant by that second comment. But yeah, no, I think like, given what Alinne was talking about, what might you say, how can human beings do better at recognizing and unlearning biases in their own thinking and interactions? hoping that they recognize that there are biases in their interactions. But if you have any thoughts about someone who maybe can't own up to the fact that they have these, if you have any thoughts about that too, I'd love to hear them.
I wrote down actually three things that I always talk about. The first one, and I mean right off the bat, if you're not willing, you're not willing, but you have to assume that you're biased
Yeah.
because you are.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as being an adult and not being biased. We're biased all the time, right? We're biased to what type of milk we prefer, to what type of coffee we prefer. We're biased to what type of romantic partner we prefer. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but and then we number two is we have to catch the autopilot thoughts, right? The instinctual thoughts. If I see a person of color and my instinctual thought is, "Oh, I'm not safe. I'm less safe right now." We have to clock that. We have to be able to check it. I was talking to my husband the other day and it was a really good conversation. Also, I often find, Marissa, to what you were saying earlier, there is just this huge difference between the sexes. And I often, and I think, or I'll say to my husband, like, it's so obvious that you've never been assaulted in your life, like
Yep.
and you have no awareness, and I can share as much of my lived experience, but it's just not going to be like second nature to
Yep.
think about what you can use for a weapon right here, right, to think about there's a guy coming down the street. Am I safe regardless of skin color? What's gonna happen, right? I've been sexually assaulted in a Kmart store. Can I walk down this aisle with this person right here? Are they gonna want to reach over, right? All okay, I'm getting sidetracked, but essentially, like, we were having a conversation about the word weird, and my partner was describing someone different than him as being weird. And I was like, we have to be careful with this rhetoric or with this word choice because it feels as though weird in this instance is being used negatively, right?
As
There this
other.
right.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate conversations with him when we think a lot alike because a lot of what we need to also hold is that if you are in a position of power, right? In this conversation, it was about heteronormative relationships. If you are in a position of power, which we are, we're heteronormative, cisgendered couple, we cannot be loosey goosey with the terms we use.
Mm.
Because me saying that a gay couple is doing something weird, whatever it is not the same as the gay couple saying that we are doing something weird. We have to be able to catch that automatic thought because we hold the power and we have to be aware that sometimes we hold privileges and things. What are we going to do with our privilege? Right? We're in that instance, we're not going to keep using this word weird. If you feel like it's different, just say that it's different, right? And sometimes different can also have negative connotations, so a different conversation, but we have to be able to catch those automatic thoughts and go a little bit deeper, right? Where is this rooted in? Am I actually privileged in this situation? What can I do with my privilege? And then really like put yourself in proximity to differences. Expose yourself to other people's different lived experience, right? If you only relate to people who live similar to you, how boring, first of all. You're not learning anything. There's so much to learn from different people. There's so much to learn from different cultures. There's so much to learn from moms who have kids with autism, who have kids with special needs. There's so much to learn. Why do you only want to hear from people that think like you or
Mhm.
from people who live exactly like you, right? Expand a little bit. It's so cool. That was long-winded.
No,
No, it wasn't. It was perfection.
the confirmation bias is like the default. In my opinion, like I learned all about different types of implicit bias and whatnot, and the confirmation bias is like so apparent
Yes. Yes.
I think
and
it's
comfortable and easy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the
Exactly.
thing too, is like we were talking with another guest before about uncomfortability being a negative thing. Right?
Mm,
Like the body holds it in a way that feels negative.
mm,
Um and othering is something like I think that piece of unpacking that in itself is just like uncomfortability leads to growth. Like
Hmm.
it does. It I don't know of a way to disprove that direct correlation. I don't. Unless you're deciding to fall back into the cloak of ignorance,
Mm,
like that's it. But like we don't have, I don't feel like people nowadays can afford to live in their ignorance
mm,
and think that they can have healthy relationships. I think the people who are living in their ignorance, you can tell are chaotic adults.
hmm.
And it's very easily visible if you spend more than 10 minutes with them.
Yes. This concept of discomfort not being a negative thing, I say this all the time in session. And what I usually say is that we have to actually flex our discomfort muscle right now. This is not going to be the end of you. This feeling, this experience, this moment, let's get comfortable at being uncomfortable. We have to, right? If we are being dictated and governed by not wanting to be uncomfortable, we're not going to be able to learn anything. We're not going to be able to overcome anything. We're not going to be able to experience unpleasant feelings. We're not going to be able to do a lot of things because a lot of things are uncomfortable. It reminds me of Dr. Becky
Raquel
Kennedy.
Martin. Oh,
No.
sorry. I love Dr. Raquel Martin. I wanted to shout her out so bad earlier and I didn't get a chance to. So I'm
I'll just
sorry
say
for
shout her out
interrupting, but
now.
I love her. Like she helps me unpack so much bias and I know that she's not creating content for me. I understand that.
Yeah.
But I feel like how can I not, I'm so sorry I interrupted. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was thinking of like that piece of it. But
Yeah.
tell me who you were talking about. I'm so sorry.
She teaches like kids are good inside. Dr. Becky Kennedy. She's
Oh
amazing.
yeah.
Yes. And
She's
part of her
wonderful.
Wonderful. And part of the thing that she teaches is that it's not the parents' responsibility to have their goal be to make sure their kids are happy, right?
Right.
Essentially, we're trying to build their regulatory skills so that as they mature and get a little bit older, they're able to handle their feelings. And she talks about the gap of learning, right? Where you don't know something and you know something well. This space here, there's going to be so much frustration, and it's the parent's duty to help the child kind of build the tolerance to be frustrated in order to learn something new. And it's uncomfortable for parents, for kids, for everyone, right? The space of being to tolerate our unpleasant feelings, frustration, annoyance, feeling less than, uncomfortability, all of these things we need these things in order to be able to grow. It's a very human concept. Um yeah.
I know, and I would love to spare my children any harm, any upset, any sadness, but I know that is where they learn, but it's so
Yes.
hard to pull back. And I'm definitely
Yes.
type A, want control, and like so much of what you said helps. It's not necessarily that I can take control, but it feels like then I maybe can control my own reaction. So there is some control, which is something that I need. Like we talked earlier, and I'm really interested in knowing what your coping skills are when you become dysregulated because I feel like you're so well put together and I need a little bit of that. Um, but like not having
Okay.
control
Same.
immediately dysregulates me. If I feel like I have zero control over the situation, you're gonna get, I don't, if Marissa had an alter ego, the alter ego shows up when there's no control in a situation.
Mm.
So yeah.
I do not have it all together, first and foremost. I don't know what about me makes you think that. I definitely have moments. I even shared earlier, right, where I was brushing my grief under the rug for very just and fair reasons, but it came out very explosive and aggressively towards my husband, right? In the moment, it was very hard to regulate. I think for me, so knowing your triggers is so important, right? Knowing like if someone's coming too close to making me feel out of control, that's going to be overwhelming, right? That's going to be hitting my button. I have quite a few buttons. If I feel to any degree that someone is rejecting me, if I feel to any degree that someone is misunderstanding me or not getting the full perspective
Oh
of
yeah.
who I am and what my intentions are, all these things are it'll push me to my limit. And for me, I've cultivated the skills of just right away ask a clarifying question. Ask your partner the clarifying question, ask this person the clarifying question so that right off the bat, right? If there is ill intent, okay, well, that's on that person, right? If there is ill intent, that's on that person, but typically there's not ill intent. Now it's a conversation, like when you do this, it makes me feel really overwhelmed. It makes me feel really alone. It makes me feel like you're not listening. What can we do moving forward? So communicating immediately has been super helpful for me. And this is across the board. If with friends, with my partner, if I'm having a day where, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but therapists experience suicidal thoughts in the sense of like suicidal ideation, where I wake up one day and I'm like, it would be nice to just kind of wake up in heaven today, right? It's very passive in the sense of like I'm not actively experiencing SI. But there are days that are really overwhelming. I'm already clocking that when it hits the 1 year anniversary for my aunt, I'm gonna feel really empty, right? I immediately will communicate to friends or to partner. I'm feeling a little suicidal today. It's very passive. It's very right. We don't have to worry, but it would just be nice not to be here, right? I just kind of want to evaporate. If I'm having an intrusive thought, I have a lot of intrusive thoughts sometimes when I cook. What happens if this knife flies and kills my husband? I sometimes will tell him, and he's like, "You let that one get out, huh? You let that thought get out." He makes a he makes a little joke out of it. For me, just communicating my internal experience has taken away the sense of shame, has taken away the sense of isolation, has taken the sense of being alone. All of these things are really helpful. And then I do a lot of like somatic, like body work. I love like back and forth. I love swaying. I love rocking. I do a lot of groundwork, so I'm on the close to the ground. A lot of body stretches, slow movements have really saved me. So really connecting with my body. And really right back to what I was saying earlier, I have a really good relationship with myself. So I am not unkind to my body. I'm not mean to my body. If I notice that something needs to be changed, if I feel like I need to lose weight, hey, maybe we can, stop eating at 8 p.m. if you're wanting to reach this goal. I'm never like, you look disgusting or you look so, no one would, I never go to that extreme. I treat myself with a lot of kindness and a lot of respect. And I would encourage everyone to do that. That's an amazing coping skill to have.
Agreed. Because there's no
I'm
one
like,
like you, and there never ever will be again.
yeah. I I'm like trying to hold back tears right now from every single word you just said. And how if it's impacting me going back to like people feeling vulnerability and connection and all of that. I think the reason that you come off as having it together, Alinne, is because you're vulnerable.
Mm,
And vulnerability, I think, is the greatest strength that humans have
mm,
because we're all just looking for connection.
mm,
But at the same time, it's like also, I think, the hardest thing for humans to do
mm,
because they're constantly working against their human nature
mm.
because of the way that society functions.
Yes.
And I just cannot thank you enough for your vulnerability because it just, I'm going to replay that clip over and over because it healed so many
Mm.
things in me and encouraged me in so many different ways that I haven't yet shared on the podcast, but now I look forward to doing. So thank you.
That
And if
means
I
so
could just
much.
add a piece to
Cry.
that, you're vulnerable and transparent in a not overburdening way.
Good.
Like
Yeah.
because then like I can think of so many times where not fortunately not with any of our podcast guests, but people in my own life where they become vulnerable, but it's to attract attention back to themselves.
Mm,
And I don't know if it's like a need for healing, but
mm.
as someone who values accountability and transparency, I recently learned at work you can overburden people with information,
Oh, yeah.
and you don't. And so it's
Good.
really refreshing. You make space for
Good.
yourself and you make space for others.
I
Thank
was
you.
about to say that. I think at the root of it is that I imagine us all standing in our own like pillows or our own squares. and I can take up as much space within, my square, and you take up as much space within your square. And when we're living authentically, there's space for all of us to take up space. Versus if I'm trying to heal something and I'm taking up my square and your square and Elena's square, Elena's square, then that becomes overburdening, right? It becomes that I'm taking up too much space and not realizing that you deserve equal space as well. So you're spot on. Thank you so much, you both.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
We end every episode with, what is one question you wish more people would ask you?
Ooh. What is one question I wish more people would ask me? I wish more people asked me. I feel like all the questions you guys asked today were really good. I wish people asked me more questions about how I don't have it together.
Okay.
Because it's so relatable, right? Understanding that I experience things, I'm a human, and in learning from each other, right? Everything is learning. I think that that's really helpful. Yeah, I would hope that people saw more of the humanity in me and asked me more about that, which I think you guys did an amazing job at asking and seeing today.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
That's awesome.
We love learning from other people, and honestly, Marissa and I have consistently talked about how to control our level of fangirling having you on where we're not losing it. And I feel like now I'm just like even more like you are our adopted sister. You don't have a choice.
I love it. Please adopt me.
And we can't thank you enough for sharing, for being vulnerable, for all that you're doing, for every community that you're creating. Like, you're just creating moments of learning that are so encouraging in a time where the world needs you.
Yeah. Speaking of which, where can people find you? Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah.
Yes, I am on. Actually, I'm on Instagram and on TikTok now, and on Facebook. As Over the Rug Therapy. I'm most active on Instagram and TikTok.
Great.
Okay.
Yes,
Now
Over
that
the
I
Rug
can
Therapy.
download that again.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Alinne.
Well, thank you for being here. We've had so much fun with you today, and we really truly cannot thank you enough. And yeah, I could just go on and on, but I won't.
Thank you.
So thank you again for coming, and listeners, stay tuned. Thank you for being here with us, and you won't want to miss our next guest. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.
That's a wrap for this episode of Everything is Learning. If you loved this episode, share it, subscribe, and let's keep the conversation going.
Stay curious and keep learning. We'll catch you next time.